Hello. Welcome to the Cult Bar Show. Renee, how are you?
I'm good. I'm hot, but I'm good.
Yeah. Man, there's an underlying joke there. But anyway, so let's start off with what are you drinking? We do not have any fancy graphics for it this time because both of our recipes were sort of off the cuff. So
Yeah,
please.
just do whatever you're going to do. So I have a whiskey tonic because we're doing an Indian cult today, depending on how you want to view it, if it's a cult or not. Obviously, we do. Because I felt like it was interesting to take Indian tonic, which the Brits bastardized by making a gin drink, and then further bastardized that with whiskey. And also, whiskey tonic is delicious. So.
Fair. Well,
and
that's good.
Because it is hot as fuck here today.
Yeah. Yeah. We were talking before the show, just like, unfortunately, your room, little backyard baseball or backyard baseball, whatever. It's inside baseball. That's the term. Thank you. And I know I hate baseball, so maybe that's why I said that wrong. You had mentioned that you don't have air conditioning in the room you're in, so yeah, we're gonna try to get through this as we can. So my drink is basically called a Zoolander, which we will explain why, because there's one particular thing that I was watching it with my wife and we were both like, that's a Zoolander quote. So we'll talk about that a bit later. This is just basically Blanco rum, muddled blackberries, mint, and lime juice. So it's a very simple cocktail, but apparently I'm supposed to eat the mint.
Oh.
I was not supposed to do that. That just came up like, ooh.
Oh. I was like.
Anyway, my recipe had no ingredients, like how much you put in anything, so I overdid the lime. I think if I did less lime, that probably would be super delicious. But
it's so weird. I also overdid the lime in mine. That was the first thing I noticed when I took a sip.
Yeah, usually, like I always think, you can never do too much lime because limes are fucking great. But yeah, whatever.
Apparently, you can. I mean, it's not a margarita, right?
Fair. All right, so why don't we do a little news?
So Doug, you sent me this video last week, and we got real curious about what it was going to be about. And I have news about what it's going to be about, but let's show the fine folks.
Yeah, let's hope. Hopefully, I haven't done this via Instagram before, so let's hope this doesn't mess it up too bad.
Rudy. And that is from Carl Litz's Facebook or Instagram, which we saw that and we were like, is that motherfucker coming back to preaching? Because he should not. Well, I have good news. He's not. He and Laura Lentz, his wife, are choosing to do a podcast discussing their relationship recovery from his cheating, which I actually think, I mean, I haven't listened to it. No commentary on the quality of this, but like in terms of like an idea, I think something like that could be really positive. Mm-hmm. It'll definitely give us, if we do choose to listen, it'll give us an idea of a better idea of what we think about his genuineness. Because I know, Doug, you agreed with me. It was like it was a tough call at the end of that documentary last month to be like, is he sorry? But I'm really glad he's not preaching.
Yeah. I didn't know this until you sent the link to me before the show. So this is news. This is good news. He's not getting back into preaching. I mean, who knows? Maybe this is his conduit to get back into that realm. I certainly hope not.
This article actually said, I think it was this one. I clicked through a couple because I was trying not to get a Christian news source, but apparently that's not possible.
Good luck when it comes to that guy. So yeah.
Yeah. So, but that it is a podcast and not a return to preaching or whatever they call it. I can't remember now. But they said that specifically. So I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that it.
Yeah. When you scroll up and you get this. All right.
Exactly. Nobody but Jesus. There we go. Back in the spotlight, but not back in ministry. So I'm
Way
hoping
to start that off.
that he understands that being in a place of power is bad for him. I'm hoping that the things he said at the end of that documentary were true, and that in the time between filming that and now, he's grown even more and taken more responsibility. And maybe this podcast is going to be like a really positive thing for people who've gone through infidelity in a marriage they don't want to end. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that I didn't listen to it, but it was interesting because that video got us both in a tizzy, thinking
I like it.
he's going to come back and like start a different church or.
And it was funny. Like we heard rumors he was going to be in like New York, and I'm like, no, please don't do that. And he in the documentary he was living in Florida, which is about the best place that dude can live because, yeah, not getting too much into Florida, but yeah. So I'm going to have to check that podcast out. Except I'm super worried because I am not Christian and I can't stomach a lot of the evangelical lingo very long, so I'm not sure how long that will be.
If you choose to remain in and rebuild a marriage where there's been significant betrayal like that, I just genuinely hope it's because you see a marriage worth saving and a person you really want to be with, and not because Jesus told you to.
Yeah, or because it looks bad for you if you, leave
or that. But like, I feel like the messaging is going to have a lot of Jesus in it, and I'm
for sure.
I think that it's fully possible to not care what a church says about divorce and still take marriage seriously. I'm crazy like that. I know. Wild ideas over here.
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on organized religion in general and Christianity specifically, but I think we'll shelve them for now.
No, we're going back to. Well, I was back to India, but when the last Indian one we did was the fake one, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was Kumare, and then before that, we also did one about the Rajanishis, Wild Country.
We've stayed away a little bit, which so this is like I feel like the first big yoga scandal, and there's been unfortunately a lot of them.
Yes.
So yeah, we'll dive into that. It was kind of interesting because like the documentary doesn't do a good job, in my opinion, of giving us like a timeline. So we kind of start in like the 70s and 80s, and then all of a sudden it's like 2005.
Yeah.
But whatever. Trigger warnings on this one. There's going to be some explicit sexual assault. Spiritual abuse is always financial abuse. Really hostile work environment stuff related to the two other things. There's some talk of child sexual abuse. And then for me, I'm just going to put this out there because like there's certain things I think that like sting harder than other things for people who have triggers around these things, stuff like this. There's some pretty explicit lack of support even from people who believe the women accusing him, and that's like kind of hard to stomach. So if like hearing us talk about that is really going to suck for you, or hearing us talk about any of the other stuff is really going to suck for you, we care about you and your health and your well-being and happiness more than we care about having eyes on our live stream. I think I got them all.
I think so.
Maybe it's some cultural appropriation, colonization type stuff in there too.
Sure, we'll go with that because that's in there too.
Yeah.
All right. So, like you said, the timeline is kind of jumbled in this documentary. And we should clarify. Usually, we watch docu-series where there's a number of episodes, so there tends to be a little bit more order about the timeline of things when we watch those, as opposed to an hour-and-a-half documentary movie. So.
I think shorter than our average episode.
Yeah, because usually we have so many episodes to get through, so we're trying to plow through things, or we get wrapped up in the first two episodes, and then we're like, "Oh shit, we need to move this along." So, yeah, this is an hour and a half. So, if you have an hour and a half, if you could stomach some of the stuff that Renee mentioned about trigger warnings.
Oh, intense fat phobia, also.
Oh my god, I forgot.
Really
that's very early on too. Yeah.
yeah, sorry. So that's another thing. Really fucking intense body shaming and fat phobia.
Yep. Yeah. So what's interesting is yes, the timeline is jumbled, but they start off where Bikram's like talking to talking to lawyers and prosecutors and things like that at the beginning. So we're jumping in at like the end, and they do this sometimes where they'll kind of jump in and where we're at the legal issue part of the thing. So yeah, and then we jump back into 70s and 80s, which I thought just the sort of old school talk show format is just so weird to watch now.
Yeah, it is.
Like it's sort of unnerving just to watch how kind of slow and goofy it is. Like maybe that's you have things like, the 80s and the 90s brought in like the Jerry Springers and the Sally Jesse Raphaels and all that, where things kind of went all wonky and everything like that. It was very much more straightforward weirdness. The first time we see him come on the screen, he comes on in a freaking Speedo out on national TV.
The first time, it wasn't even so he went from like this weird like loincloth tied type thing to a Speedo, I guess, for expediency's sake, and then he started wearing weird little matching sequin numbers for some reason.
Yeah, he almost went like sort of Richard Simmons on some of his outfits later
Yeah,
on.
but with sleeves.
Yes, but with sleeves. Yes. So yeah, just very
Makes it weirder, I
sparkly.
gotta say.
Yeah. So, and hey, nothing wrong. If you like wearing that shit, fucking rock that shit out. Good on you.
It's just
But
a lot to go from tiny black Speedo to like pastel sequins. All like it was a big change.
yeah. So we should clarify that this guy from the beginning just sounds like a freaking charlatan and a half. Just like the idea that, all right, so here's who he said his first few clients were. And I'm gonna run through a list because I wrote all these down
For a second, but
yeah.
go.
His first one was Elvis. Okay. Elvis was odd at the end, so I could buy that maybe.
Elvis was trapped in a residency in Las Vegas, though.
Yeah, but I could see him doing some weird shit like, hey, bring that weird guru
Maybe.
guy in here. You know what I mean? Like he was just an odd guy at the end because I think fame just kind of fucked him up as well as the drugs, but whatever. Then Richard Nixon, like to go from Elvis to Richard Nixon.
I'm gonna tell you the very first. So okay, so spoiler alert, it comes out he didn't really train Richard Nixon. Okay,
No, he did not.
but I already knew that because I was like, if you know anything about Richard Nixon, you know that absolutely anything associated with counterculture, anything that was not mainstream, was his fucking sworn enemy.
Mm-hmm.
He's the absolute last motherfucker on the planet who was going to do yoga, especially before yoga was popular.
Yeah, and what was interesting is he proclaimed that Nixon had a bunch of issues, and they wanted to amputate his leg, which there's never been. Now, granted, presidents keep secret all the time, but especially back then when you could keep secrets.
Well, it's just but
to a degree, but
the leg amputation story is also part of his made up genesis as well.
Yes,
it's like how many we're not talking about like 1918. Like how many leg amputation issues were people really having?
Now, the leg amputation comes up later with him too, so we'll get to that part because there's a bit of that too with him where he proclaims something that was a possibility. Some other people, George Harrison of the Beatles, Shirley MacLaine, which I actually can completely buy because Shirley MacLaine had some really interesting views that others might not.
See, with George Harrison, I feel like it's very believable. However,
yeah,
they were tight with Maharishi. I forgot his name. The Maharishi from Transcendental Meditation. Yes, and so I feel like it would be weird to be like, I mean, how many gurus does George Harrison need?
Well,
for the
needed.
man was everything. 2 gurus and everything.
Needed. He's no longer with us. But Barbara Streisand, Frank Sinatra was like absolutely fucking not. No way is Frankie fucking Sinatra in his fucking 70s and 80s being like, hey, well, let me try some of that yoga shit. Like, and considering the style of yoga they did that was like hyper aggressive,
I would love to see it, but I don't.
I would love to see Frank Sinatra with a fucking cocktail and a cigarette and this guy yelling at him to get in this fucking pose and be like, fuck you. Just walk right the fuck out of the studio. So we're starting off strong with the the bullshit. So there's I mean, they start really talking about thank you, Daniel. That was lovely. Yeah. Early on, they start talking about his wife, Rajneeshi, which is interesting because her name sounds remarkably similar to the Wild Wild Country folks. And she claims to be 20 when they got married, and Bikram is not 20. Bikram is much older than her. So there's a lot of there's never any mention that he did this. It just feels very groomer-esque to me. Maybe that's how you view it, I would think.
Well, and he even, I mean, he makes a joke about arranged marriage in India as well.
Yeah. You have no choice.
So, yeah, I feel like it's sketchy, which is also later on, one of the attorneys that's going after him kind of vilifies her. And I felt like a little bit icky about that because the circumstances of her life are very fucked. Like,
Yeah.
she has nothing and no one and no money and whatever but him. So that's a tough fucking spot to be in. Anyway, maybe she is horrible. I don't know. We don't really get to see much of her.
We get somebody later on saying that she was fine with him doing all the things he did as long as she had her Bentleys and all the stuff. So
That was the attorney saying that, which I felt
yeah,
like that was just really unfair.
yeah. So we don't know that. We don't know her scenario. We don't know what she like, what her mental state. There's a million things we don't know about her. She was very, like you said, was not talked about very much in that documentary at all. Other than that, she was his wife and had 2 kids with him. So yeah. A few people start coming in to talk now because we're getting into that mode of action where we meet Patrice Simon for the first time. We'll
Don't like her.
Yeah, we're not fans of her. And we don't know that till later on, but we're not fans of her. But
it's so weird, right? Because it starts out she's just a talking head like everyone else, and then it's just like all at once you're just like, whoa, you're not a good person.
No. We also have Val Sklar Robinson, who is a studio owner where Bikram started in Hollywood or LA. I can't. Yeah, whatever. In that. And he started there for a reason because that's where all the money is and where all the stars are because, he was trying to, bring those folks in. Interesting to me was, what was that?
He was bringing those people in out of the goodness of his heart because they needed it the most.
Yes. Yeah. The people with all the money. Yeah. Just come on. Give me all your money and then tell me. That Val Sklar Robinson, who was a studio owner, proclaimed she had a bad hip at 28, that they were telling her that she needed a hip replacement in the fucking 70s, 80s. Did they do hip replacements then? I don't even know.
I mean,
I'm thinking this was in the 80s.
But I will say this: I broke my hip for the first time when I was 19. So it just depends on what you're doing with your life.
Yeah, that's fair. I wasn't doubting her. I just thought that was mighty young for somebody who, not like, hey, let's do some physical therapy, or maybe it was just degenerative to that point. I don't know. It just seemed.
Well, if it was degenerative, then it could have been. Here's the thing: it could have been misdiagnosed, and the prognosis could have been inaccurate. There's a million reasons why that are for a different live stream about weird medical care and not Bikram Yoga, I guess.
True.
I'm just catching myself because I could go. This could be a 3-hour podcast or live stream if I started.
And off we go. Renee is on the tangent. Let's go. Let's ride the wave. Val proclaims that in her first session, she was doing one of the positions wrong because of her hip, and he just berated her in front of the entire class about it and made her do stuff. She later says that that actually, after several sessions, that her hip was better.
here's what I'm gonna say. I guess maybe also I should say that full disclosure, like I love yoga. I haven't done it in a while, but I love it. I think it's really good for a lot of the things that he says it's good for. It will not cure every disease like he says it will. But my favorite yoga teacher was a huge asshole. But not like this at all. Not like this at all. Like he was grumpy. People associate yoga with being like calming and blah blah blah, and like no, like he was there to teach you how to do yoga, and he was also very good about adaptations for people who had issues,
Mhm.
physical issues, because I have physical issues, and I don't think that you help people by forcing it. I think you help people by letting them ease into it. That's my opinion. And also, again, he was a dick, but he wasn't a dick like Bikram was calling people fat fucking bitch and like all this horrible shit, like in class, not like when he got
I,
angry with them. And it's like, no, like what I liked about my grumpy yoga teacher is that he would get upset at people sucking their guts in because he's like, you're not here to look good. You're here to do yoga, breathe right. And
yeah.
if breathing correctly means your tummy sticks out, who fucking cares?
Oh, good on that instructor.
Yeah. He was phenomenal, but he teaches in Mexico now. So,
Yeah. Maybe with Bikram.
God damn it. I know this is already stuck in my head. I don't mean
Thanks, Daniel, for putting that song in our head.
that.
Yeah. All right. So again, we have a few people talk, but then they go back to him being young, which is the thing is we're getting
Bullshit starts.
his version of what happened when he was young. And I'm going to say now that throughout all of this, the vibes I was getting from him talking about himself was Trump or Kim Jong Un. That was the two people that popped into my head about how he talked about himself and just
A real weird, like Keith Raniere story type story too, right? Where Keith Raniere is like, I was a judo champion. He's like, I was so good at yoga that they made me stop competing in yoga competitions, which were definitely a thing. That was the Trump flavor in there, I guess. Uh, yeah, it was so like weird. It was so he was the best yoga person in all of India.
yeah, he
And then they
proclaimed
were like,
he
stop doing yoga because you're too good. So he became a bodybuilder.
yeah, I have a whole thing about this because he said he was national yoga champion from 11, 12, and 13. And later on, we find out when this reporter in India goes and looks at it, there was no such thing as a national yoga competition. There was no competitive yoga.
Right, which is my husband was watching with me, and that was the first thing he said. He's like, "There's competitive yoga." I will say this though, in my note, I had to put this in here because it's fucking great. I don't know if you noticed when they're showing the supposed yoga competitions, there is a guy. There's an old man. He's an old man, and he is definitely fully 100% capable of sucking his own dick. Like the position he's, I was like, damn, it is possible.
Yeah, good on you, man. It's not just a rumor. It's not just a rumor that Marilyn Manson had his ribs removed to do it to himself. If you remember
I'll
that
take
dumb
yoga
rumor.
really fucking seriously, and anything is possible.
Yeah, and like you said, he decided that at that point he would become an Olympic weightlifter, which that's a shift. Um, now we're going to get into the leg amputation part again because he says his trainer dropped a 465-pound weight on his leg and broke his leg into 1,000 pieces.
I feel like it's possible that a weight was dropped on his leg and his leg was broken. I also feel like he dropped it on himself,
Probably.
allegedly. This is just my opinion. And it probably wasn't broken in a million pieces.
If it was broken in a million pieces, you can't reassemble that. That's the thing.
No.
Is like that would cost millions of dollars of surgery to have like microsurgeons work on your leg for like 3 days. Back then, yeah, I don't. Yeah, yeah. No, he was definitely not.
Oh my
Well,
God.
no, he was. Well, actually, I would say he was centered, very self-centered, but centered in the context of yoga, not so much. Yeah.
No, he,
Yeah. Um. All right. He said that happened 7 days before the Olympics that the weight dropped on his leg, which might be convenient that he didn't get to go to the Olympics at that point, right? Like,
It's weird because that happened a couple times when I was in the Marine Corps, where somebody just managed to break something right in the middle of preparing for deployment. Isn't that weird?
how odd.
Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, so now we're starting to get into we've had a lot of shitty stories from him, like goofy shit, but him saying he went to this is where we're doubtful about Elvis. We know later on that he never fucking met Nixon, but he proclaims in 1972 he went to meet Richard Nixon in Honolulu. I'm not even sure Nixon was ever in Honolulu. He might have been to visit the World War II memorial, maybe, but
We're on vacation.
yeah. So that's where he proclaims they wanted to amputate Nixon's legs, and he magically, with Bikram Yoga, fixed it in 4 days. What a miracle work.
I can't even imagine what would have to be wrong with your leg for them to want to amputate it in 1970, whatever it was, I forget now. Yeah, 1972. But like the things that I associate with amputation, like cannot be fixed with yoga.
No.
I'm just gonna stretch this infection, this necrotic tissue right out.
Yeah, all those broken bones, we're just going to stretch it out. You're going to get in this pose, and we're just going to fuck.
Go all Laffy Taffy.
He also proclaims that Richard Nixon gifted him a green card as an offer of gratitude, which
is hilarious.
I don't feel like that happens.
I don't even think that's the thing the president can do. Like he has like it's like a literal. He just goes in a little file cabinet and pulls out. Oh, here's a green card from my green card file.
Oh, thank you. Here's a green cards. He just carries them with him like his own business card. I don't think the president has business cards either, but if he does, it's like not many people get that business card. But
well, they're green.
Oh, it's a green one. How about this? Ay, man. Just the amount of just bullshit that guy is just spouting, even at that time.
I love because also it's like, was this the first wellness grift in North America that claimed it could cure everything from like a headache to fucking cancer?
Oh, I think we're looking more at like the vaudeville era with the elixirs and all that stuff. Like I'm sure, but not like here's this exercise shit you can do. Maybe this is the first one of that. That would be like
like this is the first wellness versus like fake medicine.
Maybe. Yeah, I mean, there's probably others we're not thinking of, but like I could see it.
Oh, I did also in this part where we're like the skyrocketing success that takes 20 years. It was very weird, right? Did you notice that they made it seem like it was an overnight success, but like it wasn't until like the 90s. Anyway, that somebody said he was a cross between Mother Teresa and Howard Stern, and I thought that was so fantastic because we now know that Mother Teresa was fucking horrible.
Yes. And we now know that Howard Stern in his older age has softened up quite a bit, comparatively speaking.
I still don't like him, but
no, I don't either. But he's definitely
actually probably a better person than Mother Teresa.
Probably. Yeah, it's funny because as it talks about how he marketed himself as sort of the bad boy of yoga, and I'm just like, yoga is not supposed to be about being an ass. It's supposed to be about how do you center yourself, how do you tap into what works for you to make you feel more connected. That's what yoga
like bringing your body and your mind and spirit all together. Not sitting on a big fluffy couch with an air conditioner blowing down your back. Although I would love to sit on a big fluffy couch with an air conditioner blowing down my back. So
yeah. I don't know. I noted this because this just fucking cracked me up. He proclaims that his fleet of classic and fancy cars were things he restored himself.
And that they actually belong to the state of California.
Yeah, later on, that's what he claimed.
The Bentleys belong to the state of California. He cut a deal with Jerry Brown personally, because again,
The governor.
This is things. Oh yeah, sorry, the governor twice. Yeah. This is things that politicians do. They cut individual deals with random yoga instructors. He cut a deal with Jerry Brown to donate all of his Bentleys, which was actually quite a few Bentleys. And they were going to be used to teach children engineering by teaching them how to work on Bentleys.
Yes. And here's where my cocktail comes in. What a lead up. My Zoolander cocktail was based on the fact that in court, he said that the lawyer asked him, what's the name of the school? It's the Bikram School of Engineering for kids to be able to build Bentleys. And all my wife and I could think was, it's the Derek Zoolander School for kids who can't read so good. That was all I could think of. And we had to stop and we laughed at it. And it just, I was like, all right.
Bentley Engineering School for ants?
I have to actually show that movie to my kids. Like, I don't show that movie. I don't show movies to my kids that are older unless I know they're fucking funny. Like, I've showed them Coming to America and Anchorman, like ones that I know that are in their sort of wheelhouse of humor. And that one would totally be in their wheelhouse of humor. So I'm going to have to show that to them because that's just a funny one. But anyway, yeah, that whole thing, just the idea that dude would restore all these cars he has. Where did he gain this expertise? I would love to know. Maybe he's just that gifted. He told people in his class that he was the smartest man that they've ever met and would ever meet. Who does that sound like? Who does that sound like?
But also, again, fucking Keith Raniere.
Yeah. They're all megalomaniacs and narcissists. So
emphasis on maniac. But yeah, it was so weird. It's so, like, you forget, because I feel like we've gone off the beaten path a few times with this live stream where it's not always like a straightforward cult. And so you start to kind of forget that they're all the fucking same. It's like you just you could Mad Lib it and come up with a relatively accurate fucking falsely claimed biography.
I wonder if you could Mad Lib it where it's like this shoe salesman, like Al Bundy, is a cult leader.
I feel like it was like he was a blank champion at 12 years old. He, it's just like, God, he claimed to be the blankest person in the world.
I just, you're right. It is like it's formulaic, which makes it seem even weirder that people fall for it. But maybe it's the formula that works for some people with a certain mentality. We saw it with Kumare, which was another one that we did that was a sort of Indian, but that was a guy who was just trying to show that he could do it. It wasn't actually he had any ill intent.
I feel like the general you, would fall for it from one person and not from another. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, that's the trick. You fall for Bikram, but you wouldn't fall for Keith Raniere because you're really into your physical health and well-being and yoga speaks to you or whatever, right? And I feel like I've experienced not like this, but things like that where, you think that you're familiar with someone's philosophy or whatever. And then when it comes out that they're a huge piece of shit, you're like, oh God, they had all the same red flags that all the other pieces of shit had.
Yep.
I just noticed, so that's what
or then you get into the justification where like Jacob, who we'll meet later, talks about how, well, he was always so nice to me. Well, just because that's not a mutually exclusive, those both can be true. They could be nice to you and just be complete pieces of shit to other people. So, yeah.
Well, and also he was a complete piece of shit to Jacob. This whole thing about, well, that's what I needed and it worked for me. It's like, well, you don't actually know if you could have gotten the same results with someone who didn't treat you like garbage.
Yeah. So to the point of Jacob, just so we kind of clear the air about who Jacob is, Jacob starts a class and he says very plainly that I was fat and I was 300 pounds. Now we have no idea what his height is. 300 pounds
He
doesn't.
showed a picture. Like he was definitely a fat person. Like I don't think anyone would argue that, but also,
Yeah,
I mean, I just we're talking about a place and time. Also, like there was not any like body positivity happening in yoga
no,
spaces.
especially in the 80s. The 80s was like, I mean, how old are you again? Sorry. I'm asking you what your age is. Sorry. I'm 52 and the 80s were that was my fucking middle school, high school years. And it was very fat phobic, like overwhelmingly fat phobic to a point that it was like, this is really like, I
Well,
was,
so I'll say this: I turned 40 next month. I wasn't really there for the 80s, but the 90s and early 2000s were also just like
oh yeah.
you couldn't you didn't get to exist, especially as fashion for women. Ooh. But like, yeah, it was a bad time. And so I don't want to get into like part of me wants to get into like who gives a shit if Jacob was fat, but the other part of me is like, well, Jacob gave a shit. And like that's his business. He's allowed to
Yeah.
want to change that if he wants to.
Yeah. So, like you said, he said that was what he needed at the time. I agree with you. Maybe he tried other things. The problem is in the 80s, what you had were fad diets.
Right.
Yeah, you had fad diets. That was your fucking whole scope of weight loss or like health regimen.
Well,
Going
and
to
if you go into a personal trainer, like there a lot of personal trainers at that time were really big on being mean.
yeah.
And I don't have any patience for that shit. Like, I don't know. Uh, I don't have any patience for personal trainers who focus on looks either. So like this is a lot of like nothing about Jacob's story sat right with me. And I just sort of feel like what I wanted for him was to have shown up somewhere else where people were not dicks. Because I think that he would feel a lot better about who he is today if that's where he showed up.
Yeah. And the problem, excuse me, when you're starting from a place of self-hatred and all you do is lose weight, you still have the self-hatred. You don't, and that's why people get eating disorders and things like that because their self-hatred is so great that they might lose weight to a point where from a conventionally attractive mindset that we have as a society, you might look fine, but to them, oh, I'm still too fat. I have this, I have this. There's when you have that sort of mentality where you just loathe your body, like, I mean, it happens like where people just don't know when to stop because they think they have to keep going.
I don't even know that it's like, it's not even, well, that definitely happens, but it's not only that. It's the idea of like, so, okay, here's my blanket recommendation for anybody listening to this. And I guess like this is the part of the live stream where if you have issues with discussions about weight and stuff like, cool.
Yeah, tune out.
But
Perfect.
my blanket recommendation for anybody who like wants to know more about their own attitudes about weight loss and fat phobia and fat acceptance and all that is to listen to the podcast Maintenance Phase because it's fucking amazing.
Great podcast.
Yeah, and you'll learn so much and you will hate the whole world, but
Yes, you will.
So I'm just like put that out front, right? But one of the things they talk about on that podcast with some frequency is that like people believe that if they lose the weight, they'll be happy. And then they do, and they're like, wait, that just made other people happy. I still have my problems. Like I still feel bad. I didn't lose the feeling bad with the weight. And I think when you look at Jacob's kind of arc through this documentary, first it was losing the weight, then it was becoming a teacher, then it was opening his own studio, then it was being successful, and then it was all falling apart because Bikram was outed as a complete fucking shitbag. And then he started the journey from what I observed, this is what I feel like happened.
Mm-hmm.
Then he started the journey of really thinking about like, what are my values? What do I believe in? What's important to me? And it didn't seem to me like he was super thrilled with the answers he got from introspection about how he behaved in the past.
Mm.
And that sucks because
Yeah.
the reality of yoga is that there is supposed to be a spiritual element to it. It shouldn't just be making your body better. It should be connecting you and making you think about these things. But instead, he had this guy screaming at him, calling him names, treating him like shit. So he didn't grow.
Yeah. And
Well, I didn't say he didn't grow at all because I don't know that. But he didn't grow in fully in ways that he could be proud of when he looked back.
And the thing is too, what he did was he lost a lot of weight and all that stuff. And Bikram would be the kind of person to be like, see, you lost all the weight. You're great now. You're perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Not like, hey, you really have to also maybe do some therapy or maybe talk to people, like work out your feelings. Like we're finding out
basing your value on what a random man with authority thinks about you.
Yeah. And just the idea is as we go further along this path of humanity in a general sense, we find out just how important mental health is and just how much that matters as much as your physical health. Like if you're struggling mentally, your physical health will not do well merely because your brain will do things to make your body just be unable to function as it needs to. So,
I mean, we know that, like, we know that people with PTSD and other unresolved trauma issues are more likely to have. I just totally lost the word. Chronic
that's okay.
illnesses. That's not the word I was looking for, but chronic illnesses. Chronic pain. We know, like, sleep issues come from that, and sleep issues cause you to gain weight. They cause all these other issues that can be chronic or long-term effects. Stress causes cortisol. Like there's so many things that if you don't take care of your mental health, your body will make you pay. And I think there's probably an element also in stories like Jacob's, if not in his story, where it's like, well, all of the symptoms of being in poor mental health, the physical symptoms started to be relieved. And so maybe I just thought that I was better.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a lot. Like this is another thing that we could do like a whole hour.
Yeah, we could.
But it is interesting. And I just thought it was kind of sad. Like there were a lot of moments in the documentary where he was speaking and I was angry with him. But at the end, when he's kind of taking ownership, I was like, man, like if he had just had literally anyone in his life that wasn't a fucking asshole about his weight, he might have not had to have this reckoning with himself because he might have grown in a more holistic and positive way.
Yeah. And like you said, there's parts where I'm empathetic towards him and part where I'm just pissed at him because there's certain things he says. I'm just like, dude, that's not okay. So yeah, you also made a point about sleep, which is an interesting sort of segue for this bit. As I get older, I find I need more sleep. When I was younger, especially before my heart attack, I prided myself on going on like 4 or 5 hours of sleep. I proudly was like, I'm like a robot, man. I can just go. I'm a workhorse, blah, blah, blah.
Everybody listening.
Don't do that.
I believe that he was an idiot. Not about everything, but definitely about that.
Yeah, very much so. And I guarantee you that contributed to my heart issues.
Yeah, it is. Well, we have a society that says you're supposed to be busy and you're supposed to grind. Yeah. Like I'm in the grind set and I hustle and I get 2 hours of sleep. It's like, oh, fuck off. Like you're going to die young.
Yeah, there is a, all right. So the grind mindset, I'm going to go on a little tangent here. So apologies. You put me on the list. So I'm blaming you. The grind mindset fucking infuriates me. I fucking hate it. I am very much a person like I do my job. I actually log in a half hour more per day than I have to, because that is years of that being pounded into my head of just being productive, work harder than everybody else, be on longer, always be available. Like I was always that guy. Mm-hmm. So you would think that I would translate that into my personal life. Fucking no. I have to be doing shit all the time. I've talked on Brothers and Booze multiple times about how I can't binge watch stuff because I can't sit that long. I feel like if I'm sitting, I'm not being productive. It fucking sucks, and it is a hard knot to undo in your brain. It is really difficult.
Here's the other thing I really hate about it. So we're going to do this. We're going on a little tangent. Fucking deal with it. Here's the other thing I hate about it because I've been experiencing this lately, right?
All right. Daniel, you get a pass on this.
Kids,
we all understand that one.
Voice, yeah. But like, what I hate about it is because everyone is expected to say they are busy. No one actually believes you when you say you're busy. And then the flip side of it is if you say no to something, you have to have a good enough reason. It's like, what the fuck? If we're all busy all the time, then shouldn't it all just make sense? Shouldn't you believe me when I say it? And shouldn't I just be able to say I don't have time? No. I have to repeat myself like a dozen times telling somebody, oh, I don't want to borrow your thing because I'm not going to have time to use it. Oh, it doesn't matter. I won't miss it. And then as soon as I borrow it every fucking day, have you used it yet? No, I work full time and go to school full time. I'm literally actually busy. And when I'm not, I protect my fucking peace.
And more people should do that.
Yes, I am like a guard dog. I am like not even a guard dog, like a fucking junkyard dog around my peace and my family time and my rest. Don't fuck with me. But then if you're not like, if I'm not saying like I'm too busy to do that and I just don't want to do something, it's like, well, you have to come up with an excuse. Yep. Everyone's like, it just proves that like there's a handful of people that are like you, Doug, who like got it drilled in and actually are always busy. You have like this like insatiable drive to be busy, and then everyone else is just fucking bullshitting.
Yeah, I wish I was bullshitting. I really do.
I believe you.
I really do. I like I like working from home, and the reason I like working from home because I work from home 4 days a week because I can do stuff around the house. That is not helpful. That is not great. I am doing shit around the house all the time, and like my wife and I are going away on Saturday night to go away, just to be away from the house.
Oh, you're going away to go away.
Because when we're at the house, it's fucking projects. That's all I see. Yeah. So I can't sit and relax. Like I can't sit and relax.
You walk into a room and you see what isn't done.
Yes.
Okay.
Or I look outside and we have a garden and a yard, like we have a half an acre of land, like we have shit going on all over. And I can't be like, you know what, that's okay. That'll wait a day or two. It's okay. Like okay, well, I gotta go do that. Like I just
see, I feel like I have all these drives, like you do, and I'm like a really bad perfectionist, so I do overwork. But the other side of it for me is I have like really fucking bad ADD. So my executive dysfunction is just like, whatever you do, don't fucking sit down. Because then
you're not moving.
Yeah, that's it. I am binge watching a fucking show. I can sit still. I could win a medal for sitting still. Except probably if you told me
to do that, then you wouldn't.
Couch, then my executive dysfunction would be like, no.
You aren't telling me what to do. I'll give you a small example so we can, and then we'll move on to more of this. But so my wife does this thing where she's like, if she puts shoes on, she has to make sure she's done with whatever she needs to do for the day before she takes her shoes off.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And that's part of her, the way and she'll be there. It'll be like 7 o'clock. I'm like, why do you have your shoes on? You've been sitting here with me. We had dinner and we watched 2 episodes of House Hunters, which is about as much as I could sit through because I can't sit still.
The dishes so she can't take her shoes off.
Yeah, but the problem is she doesn't have to do the dishes all the time because we have my son and his boyfriend and our daughter here. So we have people that can take care of that, which we do. Here, take care of this. And they're like, great, we go do it. But like, it's just something where it almost just comes like she forgets she has her shoes on.
Oh,
you know what I mean? It's executive dysfunction and ADHD, and it's just it manifests itself different for everybody. So
oh yeah, and that's it. Is like because I top load my day, so I get up in the morning and I immediately start work. because
Me too.
and it's like I will go get a cup of coffee and eat my breakfast while I start working. That way, the day cannot disappear in front of me without work getting done.
Yep. I
But
do that all.
lunch can disappear.
No, see, my stomach yells at me too much, and I can't miss lunch. But the thing is, my wife can, because she does, when she's doing her work, which her work is very intense. She has a lot of responsibilities, so she'll get to a point where she just like not even, and she's like, "Oh shit, it's 2 o'clock," and then she'll be like, I have to pee. Let me just finish this one thing and then I'll go pee. Let me finish this other thing. Gotta go pee. And all of a sudden it's like 5 alarm fucking fire. I gotta pee like right now. And that's not a fault of hers. That's just how her brain works. It just
No, that's me too. And then my dog tries to walk in front of me.
oh your high energy dog. Oh great. That's awesome. Yeah.
She starts walking in front of me because she's got to make sure the coast is clear. And I'm like, you don't get out of the way. I'm going to be on you. It's a whole thing. So maybe what we need, the three of us, me, you, and Jill, is to go to yoga and get more centered.
We love yoga. We actually did a Bikram hot yoga class once. That was not like what that guy did. It was very much more subdued, and it was lovely, except it was crazy expensive.
Oh, I fucking bet.
And I was just like, I was like, that's great. We cannot afford to do that all the time. Like,
I don't think anywhere, there's a lot of yoga offered where I live. I don't think any of it is hot yoga because it's like, come on.
It's fucking hot where you are. Like, I'm in upstate New York. It's cold half the year. So yeah. All right. So let's divulge back into that we started this show for. One thing I want to mention before we get into some of the darker bits, because we're going to start talking about Sarah Bond, and all these people. One of the things that I thought was great was they started calling Bikram Yoga.
Yes.
Because he was his goal was to open 600 satellite yoga places. That's ambitious.
That is ambitious, but also great money-making goals, because the whole point, right, is that you have to do the $10,000 course.
Yes. To be able to teach.
You have to fucking whatever, and then you have to do more of those all the time to stay, like continuing education.
That's an MLM. It was an MLM. That's the thing. It's just in a different context, right? Like that's how I viewed it.
Yeah, because I feel like when you genuinely franchise, like if I could afford it and I went out and I bought a fucking McDonald's, like you actually have the right to not participate.
Yeah.
In certain things. Yeah, you have to meet certain standards, but like you don't have to go to McDonald's University for $10,000 fucking dollars. You buy the restaurant, it's yours.
McDonald's University.
They probably have one.
I'm sure they have McDonald's schools and like all that. I'm sure they have all that shit. But yeah. It's also, before we move on, the part of the sleep thing was that Bikram claimed he slept 30 hours a month.
Oh yeah, but here's the thing. I know he's full of shit.
Oh, he's absolutely full of shit.
When he couldn't sleep, he fucking made people get out of bed and come hang out with him all night, which is just, again, like fucking Ranieri.
Ranieri, yeah.
Probably, what I feel like was probably happening. He was probably up all night with these fucking acolytes, telling them he doesn't need sleep. And then when they would leave in the morning to go do like their jobs and shit, he would go to sleep. That's what I think.
Probably. One of the parts when he was talking about how he only sleeps 30 hours a month, and he did this in an interview, and he said, "You will never find another person more pure than me." Like, again, Trump, Ranieri, all those fucking numbskulls talking about just trumpeting themselves just as
the other thing he said was the best food is no food. So he's playing into that like weird wellness grift that we see with some of the new age stuff that does often pull from Eastern philosophy, Indian practices, whatever, where it's like eventually you'll with the breatharians. Do you remember those people?
Oh, yeah.
And like the people who say that like they stun their butthole and now they don't need to eat, like you know that they're lying because that's not how anything works. But they go out like because somebody in their life has convinced them that they genuinely don't eat or sleep. They've convinced themselves that it is possible and it is a goal, and then they start lying about not eating or sleeping. And now you have like 2,000 people all telling the same fucking lie to each other and all believing that the other person is telling the truth.
Yeah. All right. Let's get into some shitty stuff, shall we? Unfortunately.
Oh, real quick.
Okay.
He called the students his family. One thing that you cannot, like, we cannot, like, reiterate enough, if you go to work somewhere and make no mistake, going to these Bikram schools was training for a job.
Mm-hmm.
If you work somewhere and they say, we're a family, they're going to treat you like shit.
Yeah, it's funny because I've worked in a lot of corporate environments, and a lot of the corporate environments said that. Now, what's interesting is the company I work for now is the most inclusive company I've ever worked for by a mile, and they have never said that.
Isn't that weird?
It's weird how they just like they show it by actions rather than saying it, you know?
It's
Yeah.
almost like when they say we're a family here, they mean in the sense that you are more likely to forgive your family for horrible shit than you are a stranger.
Very dysfunctional family kind of shit, I think is more going at, but yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So unfortunately, we got to start talking about the downfall stuff. Let's start with Sarah Bond. She was a very young member when she went to the first thing, told Bikram he was better than chocolate, which, you know, that's sort of a parallel. Chocolate, sex, you know, that whole sort of
I do
thing.
feel like, so I'll say this, like, I'm huge into music. Anybody who knows me knows that.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I was like a teenager, like especially a younger teenager, like you get really caught up in a concert, right? And like, oh, like I love you, you're God, whatever. Um, and that shouldn't be how you interact with a spiritual advisor type person. And I feel like it says a lot that he facilitated an environment where someone who was caught up like a teenager at a rock concert and not caught up like feeling deep spiritual or whatever, right? Like, not
Yeah.
that it's necessarily better to feel the deep spiritual or whatever, because those people get taken advantage of too. But
Sure.
it's like, it that sat so weird with me. Not that there's anything wrong with her, but like the environment and the way he presented himself. It's like, you're not a fucking rock star. You're teaching people how to stretch and breathe. And supposedly it's spiritual, supposedly.
Yeah. Well, like I said, we got Sarah in there. She proclaims 4 days into her session, like that she's paid for, obviously a lot of money. Says 4 days in, Bikram summons her to his quarters, which we should say that somebody mentioned that he had like a very nice house in Los Angeles, but he would do these seminars at hotels and he
And
would stay in a presidential suite.
so all of the students are living and working and eating there.
Yeah, and they're not allowed to leave.
Yeah, and so is he. So he's like creating this very culty controlled situation
Yeah, nice little
at
bubble.
every training. Yeah. Which is, I can't remember how long they were. They were several weeks long though.
9 weeks.
9. There you go. Over $1,000 a week, by the way. And I
Yeah.
bet you that didn't include their hotel rooms.
And also probably didn't include food or like nothing else, just the class. So in his 4 days, Bikram summons her to his presidential suite and basically asks her what they are going to do about their relationship. But she was like, "What? Like, what are you talking about?" Like,
I just thought I was really good at yoga.
yeah, because he pointed out and said you should be a teacher, and you know, and when Bikram points you out in this context,
Mm-hmm.
that's a big deal for him to just single you out and be like, "Hey, you should be a teacher." Power dynamics at play, as we talk about in all these cults. It's always power dynamics at play. So
Always. And
yeah,
it's God, it
yeah,
makes me mad. Because I can also, because she was very young, right? And so it's like
yeah,
this, like there's this thing that I am passionate about, and I showed up to this training, and it turns out I'm really good at it. And I'm so good at it that the guy who invented it thinks I should be a teacher. And then you find out, oh, no, he just wants to fuck me. And like that is such a crushing feeling. And I feel like a lot of women can relate to it. because then you walk away and you're like, well, wait, am I good at it?
Puts
Or is
questions
it
in your
just
head,
the
right?
other thing, right? Or is it a combination of those things? Is it just the thing? Am I good at it, but I'm not going to succeed unless I do the thing? Like, it's really, my heart broke for her.
Yeah.
And that's before we got to the really bad shit that she went through.
Yeah, what she did when this happened too, she actually went to a senior member, and the senior member told her, "You need to separate the man from the teacher," which is
If you are going to stay, I recommend you do what I do, and that is separate the man from the teacher. I wrote that down because it was so upsetting.
yep.
Because it means that everybody in the organization knew this. And this is like, I don't know, like it's so common, right? That everybody
Yep.
kind of knows. And not only do they not fucking warn you, but when it happened, they're like, look, man, like it happened.
Mhm. Yeah, shoosh. Um, yeah, there's it's interesting. We talked about how there was 9 weeks of this session that they paid $11,000 or whatever. Now, granted, it's $11,000 like the 80s and 90s. It's not $11,000 now. $11,000 now is a lot of money.
Let's see.
Back
Let's
then,
just
back
1988. I'm gonna look
yeah,
it up. Keep talking.
I'm guessing that was 30 or $40,000 back then in those in parlance to today's prices.
About $31,805.
So imagine you paid $31,000 to go to a week-long session for yoga. Now,
Mine, yeah,
yeah.
so ridiculous. It's just outrageous. So she gets called to his special room with a bunch of other people. And after they have busted their ass all day and he has sat on a chair with AC on him, he asks them to massage him because it's very hard to sit on a chair. And this is fucked up. There's something really fucked up about this story I really don't like.
Oh,
She
yeah.
says they all decide it's time to go. And she's massaging him. And they're like, let's go. And she's like, oh, I don't have my shoes, I don't have my bag. Let me get them. I'm like, no, we're going now. And they just fucking leave her. Mind you, everybody fucking knows. Like, I feel like there's no fucking rush like that to get everybody out of the room if you don't know. I think whoever that unnamed person was set her up. So anyway, they leave her there alone with Bikram after he's already propositioned her in this really gross way. And then of course he fucking tries to force himself on her, and she like wriggles away just in time, basically, to avoid
And
being.
gets out the door. Yeah.
And it's just like the way she told the story, I can't believe for a second that the person who was rounding everybody up and hurrying them out the door didn't know what was going to happen. I really feel
I find that unbelievable. They all knew what was going to happen if she was left behind.
yeah.
I think they did that because they were scared, like, get the fuck out of here before he tries to do that to one of us. That was my sense.
You're more generous than I am. I think that maybe the group felt that way or whatever, but the person who was rounding everyone up and telling her that she didn't have time to look for her bag or her shoes, I feel like that person was setting her up. Because
Maybe.
why wouldn't you, if you believed that she was at risk, why wouldn't you be like, okay, then hurry up and get your fucking shoes? Why would you make everybody leave? That's just, we don't know who that person was. She didn't say. She didn't say that she felt that that's what happened. It just was a weird story, and that's my opinion.
Yeah. It is. It's a sad story just to know that she felt like I need help and nobody was there to help me, and that sucks. Just like
The family.
yeah, the family that didn't act in a family way. Speaking of that sucks, she told Jacob this, and Jacob's like, "That sucks. What are you going to do?" That again, he was such a polarizing person in this whole
I
thing.
felt
Where
like in that moment, though, I kind of got what he was saying because she was in the same position he was.
yeah,
These courses don't qualify you to do anything but Bikram Yoga, which he attempted to fucking even copyright, even though he stole it, right? So, like, it's not like she could say, "Well, I don't wanna do this anymore. I'm gonna go teach yoga somewhere else." Um, "I don't wanna do this anymore. I guess I'm out $31,000." The
In
equivalent
today's
of.
money,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, and I feel like there were a lot of people in that situation where they started to smell what was rotten or who had negative experiences and were just like, fuck, like I'm stuck here because there is financial abuse when you say that you cannot do this job unless you keep coming back. That means that people who are victimized cannot simply go, okay, I'm just going to get through, I'm going to graduate the teacher training, I'm going to open my studio and never have to deal with it again. They can't do that.
Nope.
And if they don't open a studio, they don't get their investment back. They're kind of stuck either losing an extremely large amount of money or being in this fucking wood chip.
Abusive loop. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some things with Sarah where she kept saying she kept going back, hoping for different results. And part of it is because, like you said, you have to go through these classes and you're required. But at the end, if you want your own studio, you have to get Bikram's approval to do
Yeah,
so.
personally, yeah.
Him personally, he has to sign off on you having your own studio. So the stakes are you do all this, you spend all this money, and you might not even get your studio if he doesn't say, yes, you can have a studio. So there is a lot of power dynamics involved there, that where you feel like, fuck, I can't leave because I need this guy to sign this off and then I'll be free, which you're never free, but you know what I mean? Like you feel like you can go off on your own and do your own studio thing and be great. And unfortunately
That's not the case with this
no.
particular, yeah. And so fucking unfortunately, like I don't know, like there's no like way to ease into this. Again, trigger warning fucking city. She has to go back. They're doing a training in his home with his wife and kids upstairs. He follows her into the kitchen and rapes her right there.
That was Larissa.
Oh, that was Larissa. Sorry.
Yeah. So yes, it was Larissa who was in that. Because
Sorry.
I wrote a whole note about all that. So
Because Sarah did get this is sorry, you got me because there was a weird thing where she
he
says
raped
that
he
she
he
was
he raped
raped, but
he raped multiple women. So at the
right,
same
she
time,
says
yeah.
that she was raped, but she never actually talked in detail about when it actually happened versus the attempts.
Mhm.
That's why I got sorry. You were correct.
Oh, that's okay. It's okay. Larissa is there, so please go for it. Now we're talking about Larissa, who came to him, and she said very at the end, and she saw him as godlike, which you mentioned with when you go into a cult and you see the figurehead as the godlike figure when it's a spiritual plane that you're talking about. That's not good. That means you're not viewing like in yoga and Buddhism and things which are kind of not synonymous, but kind of in the same vein. Buddhism is a lot of like you are your own gods, like kind of that's sort of like to me that's how it feels when you talk about that stuff.
There's a whole lot of different kinds of Buddhism, just like there's a whole lot
Sure.
of different kinds of other things. So yeah, but there I mean I what I would say, I guess, in that vein is that in the US or maybe just in Western culture, we tend to think of the term guru to mean somebody who is like the best at something or who is more evolved.
Mhm.
And in these traditions, it just means teacher. That's it.
Yeah.
And so I feel like, I mean, obviously, a lot of people have like a very strong spiritual connection to their teacher in spiritual learning, I guess, but
Yeah.
it's not yeah, it I don't know. I just think it's also it's like it's when you take advantage of somebody who has attached their spirituality to you, you're not just committing the assault that you committed, but you are also committing an assault on their spirit and their spirituality, which is particularly damaging. I mean, people
Yeah.
really have a really hard time recovering from that in ways that are very difficult to understand if you haven't had to deal with it, you know?
Certainly. Um, And poor Larissa, like her story just that was the most heart-wrenching one for me personally. Just like her talking about how it happened, just how after he raped her, she kissed his forehead and left because he was her teacher and she just felt like she had to. She
There's
didn't
a thing like that in the hotel room that she said thank you or something. Like I can't remember, but there was another. She had some deference toward him as well, which again it just speaks volumes about.
she said good night, boss, to
Oh,
him when she left, and I was just like, that's a deferential statement, but she was trying to do it. I feel like, how do I get out of here?
I'm going to make this a professional interaction and not.
Yeah, yeah. So what's interesting about the Losra is she does actually confess this to a friend of hers, but her and her friend, she tells her friend, you can't say anything to anybody about this. And again, this talks to your point about just like the financial control is like she wanted her own studio, Larissa, and she knew if she spoke out, that was obliterated.
Yeah, and you said that was very heartbreaking, and I agree. I'm not at all saying it wasn't, but I think the part that really broke my heart is, Sarah did have her own studio, and she was successful, and she was teaching yoga, and her daughter said, "I want to be just like you when I grow up, mommy. I want to teach yoga like you." And her
Mhm.
immediate thought was, "You can't. You'll get raped." And that is like, it should have been such a beautiful moment,
Yeah.
right? So it's the things that it takes from you, beyond, right? And that is when she decided to speak out. But then back to your Trump comparison, he says, "Well, I don't have to do that. I don't have to rape women. I want to have sex. There's a line of women out the door waiting to volunteer," which is the weirdest fucking thing to say. But that is what he
And
said.
he's married. Let's point that bit out. He's still married at this point. He's still proclaiming that like I'm married, but he's also talking about how well I could just whatever.
And in the midst of all this, by the way, there's also extreme racial abuse going on with the people of color in the class, which fucking
Mhm.
whatever.
That's
So
that's not something that surprised me. Did it surprise you that was a problem?
no, 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 no. And it's whatever. I don't want to get into it. Because it wasn't touched on in a lot of detail in the documentary, and I just feel like there's a little bit of a quagmire there, and I don't want to make like projections about that topic. I guess I want to stick with like what we got detail on, if that makes sense.
No, and it makes sense because also we're white people, so
Yeah,
we can't really speak to that bit. So
yeah, I'm
I
not gonna
totally
make that.
agree with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, so the fucking head of legal affairs, finds out that there's multiple women coming forward with allegations of sexual harassment, sexual abuse, rape, and she's been brought from India to work for Bikram. So
Mhm.
she goes to his wife and she says, "Be careful, think of your daughter, let him have his girls." And I think this is where we're supposed to think she's a villain, but it's like that to me didn't feel villainous. It felt really sad.
Yeah, but at the same time, again, we don't get a lot of background on his wife, like what her
She's like
mentality was. So like
significantly younger than him. She's been basically imported from India. She doesn't have her own anything. And he's abusive to people in public. So you can only imagine what he's like behind closed doors.
yeah.
And I just feel like when you have someone say that, it's like she's not even like worried about her humiliation or like she's just like, just think about what it's going to do to you.
Yeah.
Do what I do and just let it happen. And that is really sad. If she's an asshole, it's still sad. Right?
Yeah.
She's an asshole who was created if she's an asshole. And that's kind of where I guess I fall on the very limited information we have about her.
Yeah. But to your point with that, she said it to his wife, and a few days later, she was basically said, resign or bad things will happen to you.
Yeah, well, and then Bikram revoked her visa, I guess because it was a work visa and he was able to like fire her. I
Yeah.
don't know.
That was the only way I could sort that out because I was like, I
Yeah.
don't know how he revokes a visa, but okay.
But he revoked her visa, canceled her electricity on her, and repossessed her car. And I'm like, well, there were some definite fucked up employment practices going on if he has the power to do all that.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah.
But we also at this point were introduced to probably my favorite person in this whole documentary, and her name is Carla Menard.
I did like her, even though I didn't like her characterization of his wife.
What's that?
I liked her, even though I didn't like her characterization of his wife, because I feel like she probably didn't know any more about his wife than we do.
That's maybe fair, but at the same time, like her tenacity for taking care of the Bikram's lawyer who got her last name was it Mandeep? Was that her name?
It sounds right. I didn't write it down.
Yeah, I think I wrote that down. But her last name was Jaffa Bowden or Bodden was the attorney, and it's the idea that she was like, you know what, fuck this, I'm gonna go, and this Carla Menard was like, all right, you're under my wing, we're gonna go, and
well, she also said, I'll take this, but you cannot settle no matter what he puts in front of you. And I thought that was bold as fuck.
that is super bold because we found out other people took settlements later on, but yeah, and her saying
well, the thing is, and she did say, like, especially with this woman, it's particularly rough because of her situation with immigration and everything else, and the fact that she had like no money, no nothing to her name. But like, it's difficult because when people think that you settle because you just don't feel like going through it, or maybe you're not the right person type to go through it, or whatever. And they don't understand that sometimes you settle because it's like, well, do I want to be doing this for the rest of my life, or do I want to get something?
Yeah.
Some recognition that wrong was done. Because, spoiler alert, he's not really faced consequences because he fucking fled the country.
Yeah, he did that. I want to talk a bit about Carla Menard here just for a moment. Was just like, it was interesting as Mandeep said that that Bikram said famous people don't do depositions. So he got deposed. And it was the worst deposition. Like,
it was so bad.
And the thing is like, she was like, I just let him talk. She's like, I didn't have to do much. The problem was that she was a woman who was demanding that he did stuff, and he fucking didn't like that at all. He fucking was like, and now his lawyer would tell him plead the fifth, but his lawyer also tried to goad her into delaying the and like saying just shitty stuff. And all I kept thinking was like, is that legal as a lawyer?
You know what it is, right? Is that Bikram went out and found a lawyer that he gelled with. So he found a huge fucking asshole.
And it was probably a fucking ambulance chaser dude who just like, you know what I mean? Like, it feels like that kind of lawyer is what I could grab.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure he paid a lot of fucking money, which is whatever. But like, yeah, I think you're right that there's probably some element of like, what are the professional ethics here? Because I know, like in real life and high stakes, whatever, and like people go into depositions with the idea that like they can ask certain questions or do certain things that are going to agitate the other side. But this was like a full on, just like they would have been more professional if they just walked in with both middle fingers up, telling her to go fuck herself.
Yeah. Like she was saying, like asking him questions, please, and then they were like, well, why don't you just delay it? Just delay it. Who gives a shit? Don't do. And like the lawyer was just like, just a fucking jackass. And I have never, and now granted, I don't have a lot of lawyerly experience in courtrooms, but it seems like just like this petulant child, like prompting, just pushing. And kudos to her to being like, nope, I'm just going to stay the course and I'm going to keep going and doing this. And she was just like, I just let them bury themselves. And he did.
And as she said, she's like, if this is how he's acting in deposition, like, this is how he's going to act in court. This is fucking awesome.
Yeah, great. My favorite thing is that she said that he didn't like 2 or 3 things. And he said, no, it's 4 things.
Yes, he corrected her and then said it. Like,
let's say what it is, because I'm going to say it. He said he doesn't like cold weather, cold food, cold hearts, or cold pussy. And then he made a face like, hey, like that kind
oh,
of
it's
face.
so funny. I'm so fucking charming. It's like, no, you're not. You're really
And he's doing that. He's doing that in a legal deposition.
You want to hear what I think is really funny? And like, I don't know how this is going to come across with their commentaries about body shaming, but the thing I did notice is that when he started, he was extremely fit. And as time progressed, and instead of being out on the floor with the teachers, he's in this chair, he's got the air conditioning, he's probably eating really beautiful food behind people's backs while he's telling them not to eat. He got less and less fit. Like, it wasn't, I mean, we know because we watched the documentary, it was not about yoga for him, but it was so clearly not about yoga for him.
Yeah. It's about money. And, there's some things where they were talking about where they were asking him in court, like he proclaimed he had no money, that he was broke. And yet he would do these Instagram posts where he would buy his kids like these fancy fucking $350,000 cars. And he's like, well, and that's where we get into well, they're not my cars. They're the state of California's cars.
Gary Brown owns my cars, as a matter of fact.
There's some things where he talks about, again, we talked about the Zoolander comment where it's just like, he was just making shit up on the fly.
Yeah.
And there was a point where the lawyer said something, and the jury just laughed at Bikram, laughed at him. When the jury laughs at you, fucking laughs at you, you are not doing well.
You're fucked. Yeah. It's not because you're charming. I will say this, I did love that when it comes out that the techniques he tried to copyright were stolen. But the guy who's saying that, it's like, they're from my teacher, who was also his teacher, and he stole them. They're not his. And then he's like, I had the only
copy
of the only copy, so I published it. And I'm like, oh my God.
And he was super proud. He was just like, yeah.
He's like, I stole them fair and square. Because his point was that you can use them and you can share them, but you have to give the teacher credit, which I guess he did very clearly. But it was just so funny to be like, they're not his. They're our teachers. And also, I made all the money on that. Like,
hey, charlatans them all. So
yeah.
So we need to get to bit to Chandrima Pal, and I'm mispronouncing that, and I feel terrible because I don't mean to do that. She's a journalist who starts investigating Bikram's past, which is where it gets super funny to me.
Oh my God, yeah, it's just
like just the idea that she said one reporter said to her that he was like all the North Calcutta story legends that you heard as a kid. Like, hey, I went into the forest and I fought a tiger, and guess what? I beat the tiger. Like, it's just all these things. Like I said, it reminds me of Trump and Kim Jong-un. If you've ever heard the stories where he proclaims he went golfing and he had like 7 holes in one on one golf outing, and like that is very Trumpian. So like
it's like your uncle who has like 40 different war stories where he was the hero, and you're like, that's quite
okay, Chuck. Okay, Chuck, you don't look like the kind of knowing who you are. It seems kind of maybe not possible now. Maybe it is, but it seems unlikely.
I did like that it came out. I mean, obviously there was no such thing as yoga competitions. We covered that, but that he did bodybuilding and stunt shows. So because this amused me, because there's something like I'm trying to remember where I heard it. It might have been Neil Pollack, who's an author who's big into yoga. It might not have been, if it wasn't, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but talking about like a lot of people go, oh, it was Kumari. People go to India to get their enlightenment, and it's a bunch of bullshit. So he's doing stunt shows. He's laying on the fucking bed of nails and like all this other stuff, and obviously
has a car run over his arm. Which that one made me laugh.
Yeah, but it's like obviously everybody around him that like on a day-to-day basis knows that it's bullshit. So it's for the tourists. It's for white people. He's been performing for white people since well before he ever came to the US. And then he gets to the US and he creates this empire of white people. And I say that because again, those who were not white were treated like fucking shit in his programs. So it's very, I mean, not that everyone was treated like shit, but
Mm-hmm.
people of color were treated even shittier.
Yep. Interesting from the perspective of Bikram being from India, treating people of color like shit. But here's the thing: in America, Christian white nationalism is a pretty big thing, and like you can tap into that. Even people who are unaware that they are that way, and just be like, "Hey, I'm going to
Well,
shit on that. I'm going to shit on that
Indian,
person of color."
Indian culture does have colorism built into a lot of the class and caste things.
Yeah, and India
So,
does have a very, very, very sort of rigid caste system. So there's that
right.
too.
Yeah, like something that I feel like I don't even really want to comment that much on because as an American, it's just like beyond my understanding how it
Mhm.
like functions. But yeah, so like it's not like, oh, I cannot fucking believe it, but it's like, oh, it's really fucking bad, whether I can
Mhm.
believe it or not, you know?
Yeah. So
So he flees the country.
well before that, he flees the country after he's in civil trial. Understand, he is never charged with a criminal case with a criminal charge. He's charged with civil lawsuits. And his former lawyer, she wins on all counts. The jury gives her a judgment of like well over $7 million, which she gets none of. She gets nary a cent from him on any of this. And what I thought was funny was like as soon as that verdict was rendered, he practically sprinted out of the court, and the reporter, and he's like, no comments. Just he was just so mad. You could see the fury just like
I don't think
oozing
he's
out of
ever
him.
believed that he would lose. I think that he's like the truest. So like, there's people who are have like these big narcissistic traits that understand that they can lose, right? They
I
understand that other people think they're wrong, even though they truly believe they're right. I don't think he had that level of understanding. I think he really thought he'd go in and he'd make up his fucking weird stories and try to be charming and it would work because it always had before.
Yeah, and it's worked for 60 plus years for him. So why would it not work now? I feel like Trump's kind of in that same vein where I think he's aghast that he was found guilty in that fucking trial. Just completely aghast. I'm Donald Trump. How the fuck are you finding me guilty for anything? Look at me. Like
Yeah.
I feel like that's how he is, and I think Bikram is very much in this cut from the same cloth.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So again, he flees the country, as you said. He gets served papers, tells him to fuck off, which is really funny. He's like, "Fuck you," and I'm like, "Sorry." There's just something very funny when someone who is not speaking their native language. I'm going to say that maybe native's the wrong term, and they're swearing, and it just sounds fucking just with such anger and vitriol, and they're just doing it as best they can, and again, it makes me sound sort of white supremacist in that way. I don't mean it that way. There's
No,
something
I
sort
mean
of funny being like, fuck you. And I'm like, yeah, but you're super guilty, dude. Like,
it would also look. It would be really funny if I tried to cuss you out in Spanish. I can. I know the words. You.
but it would sound terrible.
Yeah, it would be hilarious.
All right. A tangent on that. I've seen a flurry of TikToks. You didn't, maybe don't go in there as much as I do. I do. But there's this thing where people say they are talking in another language, but not using the right accent. It is super duper funny. It's like somebody talking in like a German act, using German words, but like in a very American accent. It sounds so wrong.
I like that because I'm Portuguese. My family's from the Azores, and Portuguese to me, when I try to explain how it sounds to people, Not Brazilian Portuguese, because that sounds very different.
Yeah, it's a very different
Portugal
style
Portuguese.
of Portuguese. Yes.
And especially Azorian Portuguese. It sounds like someone is speaking Spanish with an Eastern European accent. It's like I cannot look at a Portuguese word and pronounce it because it's my brain won't do it. Like it's not my first language if
Yeah.
that's not clear. But yeah, and so I don't know. That's just reminding me of that because Portuguese on paper looks like Spanish. And
Yeah.
you can, if you tone the Portuguese accent down, you can almost communicate Portuguese to Spanish and back.
Mm-hmm.
But then when people are like native speakers are speaking it at you, you're like, what the fuck just happened?
Yeah.
Like,
Well, it's no different than having someone who, if you take like I studied Castilian Spanish, which is way different than Spanish that's
oh,
over in the West. So if you get someone who's Puerto Rican or Dominican and they're trying to
especially
talk Spanish to you, and then it goes at like 5,000 miles an hour, and I'm just like, I am lost. I don't know what you're
Puerto
saying.
Rican is Boricua, which is beautiful.
Mhm.
It's like singing, but it doesn't sound anything like Mexican Spanish, which is I'm in California. That's what I hear all the time, you know. So yeah, but anyway, we are loving our bird walks today.
And that's what makes it fun. So
We're all over the place. It's cool.
all right, so let's talk a bit about we have Jacob and Patrice. When you finished watching this before me, and you said, "Oh my God, there's a person I think I hate more than Bikram in this whole saga," and I was
I
like,
didn't say
"Okay,
that.
no, you." What did you say?
Not
Because
more
maybe
than
I'm.
Bikram. I said I hate. Hold on, I'm gonna look it up because now you got me second guessing myself. I hope I didn't say that. That'd be terrible.
I don't think it was exactly that, but you were like, I think I dislike them almost as much as Bikram. Maybe it was something similar.
Oh, okay. There's two people who pissed me off, but one with no redemption whatsoever. I literally said, "What a fucking monster" out loud, and not about Bikram.
Okay.
So,
All
who
right.
is
So
he's a monster. Bikram is a monster, but
yeah, yes, for sure.
it's more than one.
All right. So when I watched this, there was a comment that Jacob made that I thought was kind of fucked up. Well, I thought it was really fucked up. Where he was talking about the dichotomy of him trying to rectify people coming forward with accusations against his guru, his teacher, and how he felt about the practice versus what the accusations were. So he very much talked very openly about how he really 1 minute would be thinking this is bullshit and another being like fuck, these friends of mine are dealing with this. And he said one thing where when these women were accusing him, it felt like they were assassinating my father. And I thought, for me, I thought, well, that's really super fucked up. That may be what Renee was talking about, but I was incorrect. Renee, please tell us who your person you're referring to is, because I caught it. I caught it, but I thought Jacob was worse. But anyway.
Yeah. So, but first I'm going to say why it wasn't that, and because my take on that was based on what he said after, not on that in and of itself, was that he was being very honest about what his thought process was.
Hmm.
In the present tense, in the right fucking now, Patrice says, this yoga is, I'm paraphrasing this part, this yoga is like magic. It heals people's bodies. It's so amazing. There's nothing like it in the whole world. And so I am glad that he is still teaching. I am glad that he is still out there. She is not just, hey, you know, a lot of bad shit happened, but you know, like let people rebrand and spread this amazing practice that helps people. She wasn't like, even, which I hate when people say shit like this, but it was better than what she said, which is like, well, yeah, he did a lot of bad things, but he did a lot of good things too. Yeah, so did fucking Ted Bundy. But she didn't say that. She said, I'm glad.
Ted Bundy.
Like, basically, like, let him rape whoever he wants as long as I get my fucking hot yoga. And it's just like, good God, lady. Like, you think it's worth it. You think it's worth it. That's fucking horrible. I have so much fucking chronic pain. I'm very disabled. I often walk with a cane. Nothing is worth it. No fucking improvement of my body, of my pain levels, is worth like untold numbers of young women being fucking raped.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a very self-serving perspective. So, like when you said, I'm like, ah, yeah, you're totally right. Like I just thought it was Jacob, so I stand corrected on
He was a dick. Look, there were a lot of times where you could see him coming at it from a very selfish perspective.
that. Mm-hmm.
But I did feel like in those last moments when he talked about how he feels about that now, he's done some inner work and he doesn't agree with his past actions and opinions.
Sure.
Whereas this chick's like, fuck it.
Yeah, she's like, I like it. Fuck you. So yeah.
I got mine.
Yeah. So to wrap up here with Bikram, Bikram is fled the United States, hasn't been back, but he is active in Mexico and Spain and has started new teaching courses there. So, and this is a guy in his
How does he get
70s.
students, Doug? Do you remember how he gets students?
You can explain that because I have some ideas, but not explicit. So.
Oh, okay. So the teachers at these McYogas identify people in their classes that they think are really good at Bikram yoga, and they refer them back to Bikram. So what that means is these are people who attended these teacher courses and almost certainly know what he's accused of and where it all happens, and funnel young women right to him.
Yep.
So, that's fucking evil.
Yeah. And so they're complicit in that for sure. So, yeah. And they're going to have to wrestle their souls with that. We will not. So,
yeah.
All right. So do we have any final thoughts on all this? Because, like I said, this was an 1.5-hour documentary. Usually we have a docu-series, so we can tend to go a little bit longer. But what are your final thoughts on this? Because
I think my final thoughts are like, I don't care what it is. If it's political, it's spiritual, it's physical, whatever. The person who makes you feel the strongest feelings of connection and like, oh, this is the best thing that ever happened to me. Like, that's charisma. It's not a commentary on what kind of person they are. And so you can do yoga and you can get all the benefits of yoga, and you don't ever have to treat somebody like they're above you in any way, shape, or form. Other than that, they can tell you how to do yoga better. You can, register to vote and be a member of a political party and never have to view that person as anything more than a human being who's running for office. Like, I guess we could say this at the end of every single documentary we've done, but I just feel like in this particular case, it feels stronger because these people were getting something. 9 times out of 10, we talk about a cult, nobody's getting anything tangible out of it. These people were. And the reality is that they could have got that tangible thing at any yoga studio they walked into. There. Even one that was run by some colonializing white girl with a blonde ponytail, because the poses are the poses and the stretches are the stretches. You do not have to do it with somebody who's a predator. You have to do it with somebody who calls you names. You don't have to do it with somebody who thinks that they're above the law.
Ramen to that. So, yeah. Hey, that's what I say because non-Christian and all that. And flying spaghetti monster, but Anyway, yeah. So I think that wraps up the Bikram kind of thing we were doing. So let's talk a bit about the next month that what we're going to be doing here is you and I said, do you want to do this? And you're like, I was going to suggest this.
Yeah.
So yeah, please go.
Well, I mean, I don't know that much about it. You're the TikTok guy. You're going to be our subject matter expert next episode. Oh, but this is like, I'm just like watching these previews, and there's these blonde, white girls with blonde ponytails.
It's one white girl. That's the thing. There's one white girl, and it's a bunch of other dudes. and they have rhythm. And what they do is they dance in public spheres, and then they do these
for Jesus.
Yes.
But then this preview is like there's money involved somehow. They're being, I mean, it's a cult.
Yeah, they did 7M. So 7M to me, and again, I haven't watched any of the documentary. 7M means the Seven Mountains Mandate to me.
Oh, probably.
So if you're not familiar with the Seven Mountain Mandate, that is a very evangelical Christian thing where they want to do the seven mountains of society, government, entertainment. There's seven of them, and I'm not versed on what all of them are. So yeah, so basically, I believe the 7M is a Seven Mountains Mandate.
Okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense. You know, it's so funny. I forgot to bring it up last month, but we went twice a year. Our area has a rock and gem show, and it's really cool. And we go every time. And I walked by somebody's booth, and on the back of their truck, they had a 12 Tribes bumper sticker. And I was like, you know, just with cult bumper stickers just out in the wild. And here we are. I should have taken a picture, but I was afraid that you would have seen me.
You're afraid they were going to see you taking a picture and assault you? Because yeah, that's what I would be thinking too. It's like when you see one of those stupid 3% stickers on a car, and it's always a truck. And I was like, I'm afraid to do that because that motherfucker is going to come at me with a gun.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, I would like to say that, yes, I watched a lot of TikToks. I've seen these people dance, and I didn't realize they were part of a cult. What's funny is I know I sent a few of these to Jill, and she was like, no, you didn't. She was very adamant that I had never done that. I'm pretty sure I have. But anyway,
the only thing I watch on TikTok is like really good dancers, and then like what you sent me.
Yeah, I'll send you shit. Be like, hey, look at this dumb shit. It's either something really dumb or something culty related. It's one of the two things.
I love it.
Yeah,
I just do I'm a woman of a certain age. I do all my TikTok on Instagram.
Which means you're about 3 weeks behind on TikTok. So that's great.
Right. It's fine. I don't care.
All right. So Renee, this has been great. I'm glad we have it. It was a little shorter. Usually we're fucking going on for 2.5 hours.
Yeah. Well, I'm like, look at me turning red.
Yeah, you're like starting to roast. So I think it's time. Yeah. You need to get in where the air conditioning is. So yeah.
I want to go where the people are.
Yeah. The people in the air conditioning, both. All right. So listen, we'll see you folks next month, July 3rd. Yes. Sorry, I had to look at the thing at the bottom and I wasn't paying attention. Because, I'm old. Anyway, thanks again for watching. We really appreciate it. Renee, any final words before we go?
You already did that. You can't make me do it twice.
Oh, I'm going to do it multiple times just because
You can't make me. Those are my final words.
Can't make me. All right, folks. We'll see you next month. All right. Take care. Bye.